When you decide to settle down with the person of your dreams, you expect everything to be perfect on that special day. When Diane and Richard found each other, they realized they wanted nothing more than to tie the knot and start their happy ever after. Once Diane and Richard announced their engagement, they started planning their special day. Over the next several months, they did everything to ensure the day would be memorable. Unfortunately, the big day would be tarnished, all due to what the groom's mother would wear during the big day. This decision and the bride's reaction would end up setting the internet on fire. Weddings, no matter who's getting married, are a huge event. For Diane and Richard, the wedding was just the start of their lives together. Like most couples, they were counting down the days to the event. However, Diane became worried that her big day was going to be a disaster, so she did everything she could to make certain nothing would spoil the vibe or the event, and planned for everything that could ruin their day. But she couldn't have foreseen the course of events which would take place and leave her guests with their jaws on the floor. Like most women, Diane dreamed of her big day since she was a young girl. She always had an idea of how she wanted her wedding to be and set out to make the day as memorable as possible. From the flowers to the venue to even the food, she knew exactly what she wanted. As for Richard, he wanted nothing more than to give his bride-to-be her dream wedding. However, he couldn't stop what would happen on the actual day of the wedding. If he could have, he probably would have. For many brides-to-be, one of the hardest parts of planning a wedding is getting the venue just right. The couple spent a very long time searching for the most magical place. They understood that venues can be expensive to rent out for such events, and they had to book well in advance. They had no idea the venue wouldn't be as important in comparison to what would happen at it. Another paramount element for any wedding is finding the right dress. Diane wanted to make sure the dress she picked would make her the star of the day. She, like many brides, wanted to stand out of the crowd and make an impression. Diane set out months in advance to hunt down that special dress. She finally picked one that complemented her slim physique. She picked a low-cut, strapless fishtail wedding gown. To be sure she'd stand out of the crowd on her big day, Diane and Richard agreed that the guests would have a strict color code. Together, the couple decided that the men attending would wear gray suits with blue ties, while the women would stick to wearing royal blue dresses. On paper, Diane and Richard believed the color code would be a foolproof plan. Unfortunately, unknown to the couple, their plans for a color-coded reception would fall apart, all thanks to one important guest. Everything was set for the big day. Invitations were sent out and the guests started to arrive. One turned up in a not-so-conventional dress. It seemed the dress code didn't apply to the mother of the groom. Diane's mother-in-law showed up wearing virtually the same dress that Diane wore. Naturally, Diane was in shock at what she saw. Restraining herself from bolting to the mother-in-law and demanding to know what in the world she thought she was doing, Diane held her grace. It doesn't matter whose wedding it was, there's one golden rule that everyone follows. It's a tradition for the bride to be the only one in white. If others show up in such a dress, it's not only rude but very disrespectful. Granted, it's unclear if Richard's mother intentionally disregarded the color code Diane and Richard made, or if she honestly didn't know about it. Either way, there she was in exactly the same dress and style as the bride. It's one thing to wear white to the wedding, but to show up in a nearly perfect copy of the bride's dress is disrespectful. But that is exactly what happened to Diane and her mother-in-law-to-be. Diane had spent months searching for that perfect dress only to have Richard's mother show up an identical one to embarrass her. This one act certainly put Diane in a hard spot. It wasn't like Diane could lash out at Richard's mother. Instead, she grinned and bared it during her big day, all the while plotting her revenge plan in her head. Diane wasn't the only one stuck in a hard spot. Richard was also in the same boat as Diane. With the groom being torn between his wife-to-be and his mother, it was no doubt an awkward place for Richard. It seemed that the actions of Richard's mom were a catalyst for Richard. Was he going to call out his mother or tell his wife-to-be that she was overreacting? It's not surprising how one dress can make or break a wedding, but with all the months Diane spent planning her event only to be ruined by Richard's mother was too much for Diane. The worst part was that the rest of the guests could see what was happening. Unfortunately, Diane and Richard's wedding wasn't the first time a mother-in-law tried to upstage the bride, and it wouldn't be the last. You'd think that perhaps this kind of fiasco doesn't happen except on rare occasions. However, it does happen more often than not. Take the royal family, for example. Some say Meghan Markle wore something similar to what Kate Middleton wore for her big day. Luckily, though, the dress wasn't worn on the same day, but for Diane's wedding, the dress was too close to what the bride wore. The mother-in-law definitively took things to a whole new level. While Richard's mother danced about the event in her copycat dress, she was oblivious that she was the elephant in the room. The mother-in-law even posed for the wedding photographer while holding one of her grandkids. The photographer even remarked about the dress, asking if she was the bride. Diane was crushed to hear these remarks, and what was worse, the mother-in-law posed with the bridesmaids too. The wedding photographer appeared to enjoy the awkwardness of the event and how similarly the mother-in-law looked like the bride. The strapless dress clearly made the mother-in-law feel like $1,000,000. When Diane's bridesmaids walked by, the mother-in-law had the gall to ask them to pose with her for a picture. Again, Diane was in the wrong place in the wrong time and got a clear picture of her maids with a crowd-hogging mother-in-law. When a groomsman asked the bride and her maids to take a selfie with him, the evidence was clear. It was the photo that proved just how similar the dresses were. The image was posted online showing the similarities. Granted, it's the small moments that the bride should hold dear when thinking about the day, but Diane found it harder and harder to shake off what her mother-in-law did to her on her wedding day. Despite the awkwardness of the mixed-up dresses and the mother-in-law overstepping her boundaries, Diane made the day work out for her. She kept a smile on her face and refused to let her mother-in-law get the best of her. At the end of the day, the wedding went according to plan, and Diane even remained composed when speaking with Richard's mom. However, the event stung Diane. Deep down, Diane was still furious despite pretending everything was okay. She wanted nothing more than to call out her mother-in-law for wearing a dress similar to hers. Yet she remained composed and bottled her emotions to plan the perfect revenge. After all, this was her day, and she wasn't gonna let anything ruin it for her. There's no way around it. Diane's mother-in-law was clearly trying to steal all the attention. Why else would she wear something so similar to the bride? But why would Richard's mother want to upstage Diane on her big day? As the questions hounded Diane, one thing was certain. Diane loved Richard even though she'd never be able to redo her wedding. Since she couldn't turn back time, Diane did want to get even with the mother-in-law in one way or another. Time soon drifted by, but still Diane couldn't get over what Richard's mother had done. Determined to get revenge, she knew she didn't want to escalate things. Instead, Diane took her case to the internet and told her story of what went down on her wedding day. In the beginning, she just wanted a way to vent her frustration, but her story would soon get attention from people all over the world. Diane spoke to one of her friends about the event and was introduced to a social media site. The site is dedicated to brides who want to publicly shame people who ruin their weddings. The site only had one rule though: the bride or person posting had to remain anonymous. This was perfect for Diana. She didn't want to place her name out there, and so without further ado, she typed her story and posted for the world to see. Diane was worried that maybe someone attending her wedding would read her post and know exactly who she was talking about, but she followed her gut and hit the post button along with photos to prove her point. It didn't take long before Diane's post started generating traffic. Tons of people commented on her story, showing her support and words of encouragement. It was agreed by the comments that the mother-in-law was completely in the wrong. The longer the post remained up, the more the comments came pouring in. Many people were not only disgusted but furious with the mother-in-law. One person even commented saying the mother-in-law appeared to be unhinged. As weeks went by and the comments continued to come in, it was clear to Diane that the public was on Diane's side. With all the positive comments, it was clear to Diane who her mother-in-law really was. Before Diane's big day, she made it clear to her guests that there was a dress code. The mother-in-law had no excuses. The request was right there on the invitation. Yet she still showed up, wearing a nearly identical dress to Diane. Yet the comments on the social media site were crystal clear, and Diane's biggest fear came to the surface. The mother-in-law wore that dress because she wanted to be rude. The mother-in-law tried to upstage the bride spitefully. After realizing this truth, Diane felt justified in posting her story online. It's not difficult to stick to a dress code, especially with so much time to plan for the event in advance. Granted, there may be a few that were a +1 that didn't know, but the mother-in-law? Nope, she should have known about the code and chose to ignore it. There's just no way she would forget about something that important, and to show up in a wedding dress so similar to the bride's was more than a slap in the face. Diane never expected that her story would be shared and viewed as many times as it was. Her story traveled and more people backed Diane up, stating the mother-in-law was being disrespectful. Feeling empowered, Diane no longer had to hide in obscurity. With thousands of people backing Diane, it was clear the mother-in-law was being completely spiteful. Some comments even stated how the mother-in-law should have been more cautious of what she wore. During the big day, Diane was too overwhelmed with the whole event that she couldn't think straight. She wanted desperately to get some form of revenge, but she just didn't know how. Luckily for her, though, once her post went viral, she wasn't alone in her feelings. Many people supported Diane and gave her a voice to her inner fears and feelings. Despite everything that happened, Diane still wanted a decent relationship with her mother-in-law. Diane would never be able to forget what happened on her wedding day. Even her wedding photos reminded her of what went down and tarnished her big day with embarrassment. After everything, though, Diane kept her cool and kept her head up, refusing to let her mother-in-law ruin it for her. She hoped that one day, though, she would be able to unleash her fury, but only if the timing was right. After posting her story, Diane received one message that stated how the bride should have spilt a drink on the mother-in-law or smashed cake in her face to ruin the dress. The poster stated how she would have made it look like an accident, yet others opposed getting revenge. Granted, when you post something online, you're gonna get mixed reviews and opinions. One of the more controversial statements stated the mother-in-law looked good. The comment mentioned how despite the dress being too bride-esque, the mother-in-law rocked it. The poster concluded the comment by stating that it was the wrong time to wear the dress. Another poster bookended the comment sharing a different point of view while still highlighting how good the mother-in-law looked. The commenter stated how the mother-in-law did look hot but should have worn something else. Out of all the dresses available, why would the mother-in-law pick that style and type of dress? After all, there are tons of dresses to pick from and still look good, but a wedding dress when you aren't the bride? What was she thinking? Out of all the comments that were posted under Diane's story, one stated how brave the mother-in-law was. Another statement by a commenter stated how she wouldn't have kicked her out of the wedding for wearing the dress, only because it was a bold move. Bold or disrespectful? The response was mixed. As for Diane and Richard, at least they have their love to fall back on, as long as their mother-in-law stays out of the picture.